Rhine front, March 1945. Cold mist clung to the river like a breathing creature, swirling between shattered trees and the ruins of farmhouses long since abandoned. Floodwaters rolled past in dark, relentless currents, thick with debris, broken timbers, and the remnants of retreating German engineers who had blown every major crossing within reach. On the western bank, a mass of exhausted Allied soldiers, over 5,000 troops of the 78th Infantry Division, waited in tense silence. Their mission was simple on paper: cross the Rhine before dawn and establish a foothold on the far side. But without a bridge, it was suicide, and every bridge within 50 miles had already been destroyed. That's when Captain Elias Ward, a 28-year-old combat engineer from Ohio, stepped forward with a plan so unorthodox, so desperate, that even his own battalion commander stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Ward set down his mud-stained map and spoke plainly. We build a bridge tonight. Not a standard Bailey, not pontoons. Something else. Something faster. Lieutenant Marlowe scoffed. In one night? Under artillery fire? With the river running this fast? Captain, that's madness. Ward didn't flinch. We don't need the bridge to last a week. We need it to last 3 hours. Long enough for the infantry and armor to cross. Colonel Hargrove rubbed his temples. You're talking about building a floating improvised chain-linked roadway out of scrap barges at night under fire? Ward nodded. Yes, sir. One engineer muttered, "This is lunacy. The current alone will rip it apart." But Ward stepped closer to the edge of the river, watching how the moonlight skimmed across the surface. He had been studying the water for hours, its rhythms, its eddies, the shape of the flood surge, and he saw something others didn't. "The river isn't steady," he said quietly. "It pulses. There's a window, about 18 minutes, when the current slackens between tidal surges. That's when we anchor the spans. That's when we connect the floating sections." Marlowe shook his head. "You're proposing to build a bridge in a breathing river?" Ward nodded. "It breathes, so we build between breaths." The officers fell silent. Behind them, thousands of soldiers waited, cold, hungry, and exposed. If they failed to cross tonight, the German counterattacks forming on the far bank would crush the bridgehead before it ever began. Hargrove finally looked up. "If your plan fails, we lose the entire division." Ward held his gaze. "And if we do nothing, sir, we lose the war's momentum." The colonel took a long breath. "Then God help us. We're building your mad bridge." What followed, beginning at 21:17 hours, will become one of the most daring engineering operations of the entire European campaign. A frantic race against water, darkness, artillery, and time. By dawn, every soldier on that riverbank would understand the truth. What they first called madness became the bridge that saved 5,000 lives. The operation began the moment full darkness settled over the Rhine. No moon, no stars, just cold mist rolling off the river, and the distant thump of German artillery probing the far bank. Captain Elias Ward walked down the muddy shoreline with a flashlight pointed at the ground, its beam covered with 2 layers of red cloth to avoid detection. Behind him, a column of engineers hauled ropes, anchors, steel pins, portable winches, and the strangest assortment of floating scrap anyone had ever attempted to bridge a major European river with. Lieutenant Marlowe jogged up beside him. "Ward, I still don't see how this is supposed to work." Ward didn't slow. "It works because it has to." Marlowe stepped in front of him, forcing him to stop. "No, Elias. I mean structurally. These barges are half-run. Some of them are literal cattle ferries. You want to chain them together in a river that's eating trees whole." Ward finally lifted his eyes. His voice stayed calm. "We're not building a proper bridge. We're building a pathway. Think of it like stitching a wound. Each barge is a stitch. The current pushes them. Fine. Let it. We'll angle the lines so the river pressure actually reinforces the structure instead of tearing it apart." Marlowe blinked. "You're using the current to help us?" Ward nodded. "Exactly. We're not fighting the river. We're negotiating with it. The first attempt and the first failure." At 21:34, the engineers pushed the first barge segment into the water. It swung wildly, nearly yanking 2 men into the river. Ropes screamed under tension. The current grabbed the barge like a toy, and flung it downstream. "Anchor it," Ward shouted. 3 teams slammed iron anchors into the mud, but the water tore them free. 1, 2, 3, dragging the ropes like threads. Marlowe cursed. "This is insane. We can't fight that." Ward watched, jaw tight. He wasn't surprised. "I told you the river breathes." He opened his notebook, a waterlogged set of observations he'd kept for the last 48 hours. He pointed at a sketch. "Wait for the lull. Next one in 12 minutes." Marlowe stammered. "And if your timing is off by 30 seconds?" Ward simply said, "It won't be." The lull arrives. 12 minutes later, the river shifted. The surface smoothed. The roar softened. The current almost relaxed. Ward snapped his fingers. "Go, now." The engineers shoved the barge again. This time it drifted out gently instead of thrashing. Ropes tightened, but held. Anchors dug deeper. The current pressed against the angled lines exactly as Ward predicted, pushing the barge into a stable position. Marlowe stared. "I'll be damned, it's holding." Ward didn't celebrate. 1 down, 27 to go. German spotters take notice. High, on the far bank, a German artillery observer wiped condensation from his binoculars. Through the fog, he saw shadows on the water. Movement where none should be. American are bound, it was. They're building something. He radioed coordinates to a Nebelwerfer battery. The reply came back. Few or bright. Ready to fire. Ward didn't need to see the Germans to know they were being watched. Every instinct told him time was shrinking faster than the river's tiny breathing window. The bridge begins to take shape. By 22:10, 3 barges were locked together by chains and wooden planks hastily nailed across gaps. The structure creaked like an old barn just waiting to collapse. But it didn't. Infantry standing on the shore stared wide-eyed as the mad bridge slowly snaked outward across the Rhine. Private Downs whispered, "They're actually doing it." His buddy elbowed him. "Don't say that. You'll jinx the whole thing." Ward moved from team to team, adjusting rope angles, shifting weight, tightening clamps. His hands were numb, his coat soaked. Mud caked his boots so heavily he felt 10 pounds heavier. But the bridge grew. 5 barges, then 8, then 10. Everyone added made the structure lean harder, groan louder, fight back stronger. But Ward anticipated each movement. He murmured to Marlowe, "Keep it angled, let the river do the work." The river rumbled beneath them, but so far it obeyed. The first crisis hits. At barge 12, a sudden surge rolled through the Rhine, a wall of water from upstream rainfall. It smashed into the half-built bridge like a fist. The structure buckled hard. Ropes snapped, for barges twisted sideways. Engineers shouted, "It's breaking. Hold the lines. We're losing the midsection." Marlowe grabbed Ward's shoulder. "Elias, tell them to fall back. It's over." Ward's eyes stayed locked on the water. "No, the surge will pass in 20 seconds. Hold. We can't hold 20. But Ward grabbed a loose rope himself, digging his boots into freezing mud, leaning back with every ounce of strength he had. 20 seconds. Hold. For 20 seconds, chaos reigned. The structure groaned. The engineers screamed. The river roared. Then just as suddenly, the surge weakened. The Rhine went calm again. The battered midsection settled. The ropes tightened. The bridge stabilized. Marlowe collapsed to a knee, gasping. "Elias, how did you know?" Ward wiped mud from his face. "Because the river warned me. You just have to learn its rhythm." The Germans opened fire. A distant howl rose from across the water. Marlowe recognized it instantly. Nebelwerfers. Ward froze. "Oh no." 6 seconds later, the first rocket slammed into the shoreline, exploding in a violent geyser of mud and shrapnel. The next barrage would land on the bridge. Ward's voice went hoarse. "Everybody down. Take cover. We work between strikes." Because now under fire, the mad bridge would face its greatest test. And so would the men building it. The first Nebelwerfer barrage crashed down like the sky itself had cracked open. A ripple of shrieking rockets tore across the shoreline, punching deep craters in mud and blasting engineers off their feet. Fiery fragments hissed through the freezing night air, clattering off metal barges and splintering into the river with violent splashes. Lieutenant Marlowe hit the ground hard behind a crate of coiled rope. "Ward, we can't work under this." Ward crouched behind a shattered pontoon, mud spraying across his helmet as another rocket slammed into the riverbank. "We don't have a choice," he shouted back. "If we stop, the whole structure will twist with the current and tear itself apart." Marlowe pointed toward the far bank. "They're ranging us. The next barrage will be dead on." Ward scanned the broken silhouette of the half-built bridge. The barges rocked violently with every explosion, waves hammering their undersides in rhythmic, gut-punching thuds. Engineers scrambled for cover while trying to keep ropes from slipping, chains from buckling, and anchors from dragging free under the shifting weight. Ward made his decision. "We move during the gaps," he roared to his entire team. 10 seconds between volleys. When their rockets fire, you take cover. When they reload, you work. Marlowe stared as if he'd lost his mind. "You're timing artillery now?" Ward's eyes narrowed. "I'm timing everything tonight." A deadly rhythm. The Germans fired in volleys. 5 seconds of unholy, screaming chaos. Then 10 to 12 seconds of silence as new rockets were loaded. Ward raised his hand. "Wait for the gap. Wait, wait. Now, go." Engineers burst into motion, racing along the slippery planks connecting the barges. Men hammered pins, tightened chains, braced beams, and shoved drifting sections back into alignment with poles and hook lines. Then the next volley screamed toward them. "Down." Ward bellowed. Everyone dropped flat. Rockets slammed into the river, geysers exploding in sheets of icy spray that rained over the engineers like shrapnel-laced hail. Ward's heart pounded, but the bridge held. A barge breaks loose. At 23:42, one of the critical midsection barges, number 16, lurched violently as a rocket detonated almost directly beneath it. The shockwave ripped 2 anchor lines free. "We're losing 16, someone shouted. The barge spun sideways, threatening to break the entire structure like a hinge snapping. Ward sprinted across bouncing planks that felt as unstable as a funhouse floor. The river below churned with exploding water. Smoke stung his eyes. "Pull back into position," he yelled. 3 engineers grabbed ropes, straining with everything they had. Their boots skidded on wet planks, wooden boards groaning under strain. The barge slid another meter downstream. Marlowe grabbed Ward's arm. "We need more men." Ward nodded. "For more on the lines. Move." The added weight slowly forced the barge back into alignment. But then another problem hit. "Ward, we're taking on water." Number 16 was leaking from its seams, punched repeatedly by shrapnel. Water poured in faster than 2 men could bail. Ward grabbed a toolkit. "Patch IT now." "With what?" Marlowe yelled. Ward slammed a knee against the barge's hull and held up a thick roll of canvas, tar, and wooden wedges. "This, improvise." And, unbelievably, they did. Under fire, in the dark, on a river that wanted to kill them. Infantry watching the impossible. On the western bank, thousands of soldiers, huddled in shadows, watched the impossible sight of engineers fighting the river and rocket fire at the same time. One sergeant muttered, "They're mad, completely mad." Another soldier replied, "No, that's Ward. He sees rivers different." Rumor spread quickly among the infantry. Bridges still holding. They lost a barge, but got it back. They're working between rocket volleys. Hope flickered across cold, exhausted faces. The river surges again. At 0:06, Ward stiffened. He felt the river shift beneath him. Not with his eyes, but with his feet. A pulse, a pressure, a deep, rolling surge rising upstream. "Oh no, not now," he muttered. Marlowe saw his expression. What now?" Ward looked out across the water. "The next surge is early. They're going to hit before we secure the eastern end." Marlowe's face went pale. "And if it hits before we connect, it'll tear the whole bridge free and take 30 men with it." Ward didn't hesitate. He sprinted along the creaking structure and shouted, "All teams, brace the lines. Hold everything you've got. Surge in 20 seconds." Engineers scrambled, digging their boots into the planks, wrapping ropes around their arms, gripping beams with white-knuckled desperation. 15, Ward shouted. Rockets lit up the far bank again, their metallic howl shredding the night. 10. Barges moaned under rising tension. 9, 8. Hold it. The surge hit like a charging animal. Water heaved upward. The entire bridge lunged sideways. Men screamed. Rope snapped. A barge climbed half out of the water, rolling violently. Yet Ward kept shouting, hold, hold, hold. And somehow, against physics, against artillery, against the river itself, the engineers held long enough for the surge to pass. When the water calmed again, Marlowe looked at Ward with something beyond respect, something closer to disbelief. How did you know the surge was coming early? Ward wiped mud and blood from his temple. Because the river warned me again. The final push before dawn. By 0:30, despite rocket surges, rip cables, and near disasters, the bridge had reached within 12 meters of the far bank. Ward looked to Marlowe. This is it. We finished the last span now. Marlowe nodded. We finish it or we die trying. Ward took a breath. Then, let's finish it. Because in part 3, the real horror begins. When the Germans unleash direct artillery and the final gap becomes a fight, not just for the bridge, but for the survival of the entire operation. The final stretch of the bridge, just 12 meters from the far bank, was the most dangerous of all. Every engineer on the Rhine knew it. Every infantryman watching from the shadows held his breath. And Captain Elias Ward felt the weight of 5,000 soldiers pressing down on his shoulders like a physical force. Once we anchor the last span, Ward shouted. Infantry crosses immediately. Armor follows as soon as the deck is reinforced. Marlowe nodded grimly. That's assuming we survive 12 meters. Ward's jaw tightened. We will. But even he didn't fully believe it. The Germans switched to direct fire. Up on the far bank, German officers had grown impatient. Nebelwerfer rockets weren't stopping the Allied engineers. The bridge kept expanding, kept holding, kept defying the river. A colonel slammed his fist on the observation post rail. Janik, enough. Bring the 88s forward. Minutes later, the ominous silhouette of a German flak 88 dragged into direct fire position, angled downward toward the river. Its barrel glinted in the moonlight, black against the mist. The loader rammed in an armor-piercing round. The gun captain barked. Fewer. The first shot tore across the river. A supersonic scream followed by a thunderous impact that blew a chunk from barge number 21, showering men with splinters and twisted metal. Ward ducked, nearly thrown off the planks. They brought 88s on us? Marlowe yelled. They're scared, Ward replied. That means we're close. The second round hit the water just short of the bridge, creating a geyser that drenched 4 engineers and nearly knocked them into the current. We need smoke, Ward ordered. But they had none. Only the river, the darkness and time slipping away. Ward's improvised smoke plan. Ward scanned the shoreline and pointed. The fuel drums rolled them into the river. Marlowe balked. Elias, we need those for the generators. No time. We punch holes, light them, and push them out. The current will carry smoke between us and the guns. It was insane, desperate, mad. But so was everything else that night. Within minutes, engineers had punched holes in the tops of fuel barrels, stuffed them with scraps of cloth, lit them, and shoved them into the river. They floated downstream, smoking violently, drifting into the space between the German guns and the unfinished bridge. A screen began to form. Crude, but enough. Ward exhaled. That's our window. The final span. The last barge was maneuvered into position by rope teams fighting the current with every muscle in their bodies. Waves hammered it. Artillery shook the riverbank. The monstrous 88s fired again and again, their shock waves vibrating the planks under Ward's boots. Left team, halt. Right team, give slack. Ward commanded. Marlowe shouted, it's drifting. We're losing the angle. Ward kicked off his boots, threw off his jacket, and jumped onto the unsecured barge. Marlowe screamed, Elias, no. Ward hit the deck and rolled, grabbing hold of a dangling chain. Full, he roared. The entire engineering platoon heaved. Veins bulged, boots slid, ropes burned hands raw. But the barge moved, millimeter by millimeter. Port alignment. The 88s find their range. One shell hit barge number 23, blasting open its hull. Water poured in. The barge dipped dangerously. "We're sinking," a corporal shouted. Ward didn't even look. "Let us sink slow. Keep the angle. Get the last span secured." Marlowe shouted, "If number 23 goes under too fast, we ride it down with planks and cross before it sinks." Marlowe stared. "That's not a bridge plan, that's a suicide plan." Ward pulled the final locking pin from his belt with shaking, frozen fingers. "It's a plan that gets troops across." A shell slammed into the far bank behind them, spraying stones and soil into the river. Ward shouted, "Anchor ready?" "Ready." "Chain set." "Set." Ward lifted the pin high. "Lock it." He plunged it through the iron bracket, hammering it with the butt of his rifle. The final span connected. The bridge, battered, trembling, half floating, half sinking, was complete. The Germans can't believe it. Up on the ridge, German artillery crews saw the impossible. The Americans had finished the bridge under direct fire. One loader whispered, "Yes, es Wahnsinn. It is madness." The commander stared down the sights of the 88. "Then we destroy it now." But as he prepared to fire, massive plumes of smoke drifted directly across their line of sight. "We've lost visibility. Adjust by sound." "I can't. The river is too loud." For the first time, the Rhine itself defended the engineers. "Infantry, move out." On the western bank, Colonel Hargrove saw the final signal flare. Red, then white, then red again. The bridge was ready. He didn't wait. "Infantry, first wave. Move, move, move." 5,000 soldiers surged forward through the smoke and darkness toward a bridge no one believed could exist. Ward watched them come, exhausted, soaked, shaking, and covered in river mud. Marlowe stood beside him, voice cracking. "Elias, they're actually crossing." Ward nodded slowly. "That's why we built it." The moment the infantry surged onto the bridge, the Germans opened up with everything they had left. Machine guns cracked from concealed positions along the far bank. Mortars thumped deeper inland. And the 88s, blind behind Ward's improvised smoke curtain, began firing by prediction and memory, sending deafening blasts through the fog. Ward sprinted to the midpoint of the structure, shouting, "Keep moving. Don't stop. Stay spread out." Men rushed past him, some slipping, some staggering, many clutching rifles, radios, or ammo crates as the bridge groaned beneath their boots. The floating walkway rocked violently with each step, water sloshing across the planks. Marlowe tightened a chain at the starboard anchor point. "Elias, the barges can't take this weight." Ward leaned against the railing, watching 3 rifle squads move across the heaving structure. "They don't need to take it long," he said. "Just long enough." The bridge begins to sink. At 1:03, barge number 23, already holed by artillery in Part 3, finally began to submerge. Ward heard the shift before anyone saw it. A deep wooden moan, a sloshing roar, a sudden tilt. He turned. "Everyone hold the west side. Number 23 is going down." Marlowe's voice cracked across the structure. "If number 23 sinks, we lose the whole east half." Ward shook his head violently. "No, the river's current is strong enough to hold the alignment if we angle the upstream barges, cut the outer chain, and let the surge push number 24 into the slot." Marlowe froze. "That'll shift the entire bridge. It'll shift it into position, Marlowe." "Do it." Marlowe slashed the rope with a combat knife. Barge number 24 swung into place like a hinge driven by the river's fury. The deck lurched, nearly tossing 2 infantrymen into the water. But the alignment miraculously held. Ward grabbed one soldier by the collar and shoved him forward. "Don't stop. Move." German machine guns zeroing. As the smoke thinned, the Germans found new firing angles. Tracer fire streaked across the river, snapping past helmets and ricocheting off the metal edges of the barges. A mortar shell exploded 15 yards from the bridge, sending a sheet of shrapnel across its surface. 3 men stumbled, but kept going. Ward moved to the eastern end, planting himself between incoming fire and the men running toward him. He waved them forward. Refusing to duck, even as bullets cracked around him. Go, go, keep your interval. Don't cluster. One sergeant yelled, "Sir, you're standing in open fire." Ward didn't move. These men need direction more than I need cover. Behind him, a machine gun burst shredded a plank, splinters flying. Ward didn't look back, keeping the bridge alive. At the center of the structure, engineers were literally holding ropes in their bare hands, bracing sagging sections of the walkway so soldiers could cross. Private Hanson shouted, "The barrel hinge is slipping." Ward sprinted toward him, feet pounding on the unstable planks. "Brace it with anything. I don't care what. We're out of material." Ward ripped a steel picket from a support crate. "Use this." Hanson jammed it into place as the walkway lurched downward under the advancing troops. Another engineer screamed, "We've got a breach. Water coming up through deck 14. Ward leaned over the side and saw that the river now lapped over the top of one barge segment. "We lose that one," Marlowe warned, "and the whole middle collapses." Ward wiped mud from his face, eyes burning. "Then we don't lose it." He jumped to the side of the sinking section and shouted, "Counterweight team, get sandbags. If we can't keep it up, we keep it balanced." It was insane. It broke every engineering rule. It shouldn't have worked. But with 4 men shifting their weight and 3 dumping sand, the barge stabilized, just enough for a continuous flow of infantry. 5,000 troops across the bridge. By 2:27, the last battalion crossed onto the eastern shore under heavy fire. American troops fanned out, taking positions in trenches and shell craters, pushing deep into German territory. Colonel Hargrove came rushing down the embankment to find Ward leaning against a rail, soaked, bleeding, covered in mud and smoke. Captain there across. All of them, 5,000 troops. Ward exhaled slowly. "Bridge status." Marlowe jogged up, winded, barely holding. "We're repairing as fast as it's sinking." Hargrove looked between them. "You two just did something no textbook, manual, or engineer on Earth would sign off on." Ward shrugged lightly. It wasn't in a textbook because it shouldn't have worked. He glanced back at the bridge, visibly sagging. One barge, half submerged. But it did. The bridge's final moments. At 2:41, 14 minutes after the last soldier crossed, a direct 88 shell hit the midsection. The bridge buckled. Chains snapped. Barges twisted. Marlowe shouted, "Ward, fall back. It's going." Ward and the remaining engineers sprinted for the western shore as the structure tore itself apart behind them. Planks snapped like broken bones. Water swallowed the barges. The remaining ropes whipped into the air with deadly force. By the time Ward reached the bank, the bridge was gone, claimed by the river it had defied for 4 hours. Hargrove stared at the foam-covered ruins. "Elias, you built a miracle." Ward shook his head, breathing hard. "No, sir. We built a bridge that lasted just long enough." He looked toward the far bank, now filled with American troops, forming a critical foothold. And that was all that mattered. By dawn, a pale blue-gray light spread across the Rhine, revealing the aftermath of the most improbable engineering feat of the European campaign. The river still churned violently, swollen from recent rains. But now its eastern bank was lined with thousands of American soldiers, rifles ready, dug in alive, because one mad, improvised bridge had carried them through the night. Captain Elias Ward squinted toward the far side through binoculars. He saw medics establishing an aid station. He saw artillery crews hauling their first 105mm guns up a slope. He saw infantry spreading into defensive positions before the Germans could counterattack. He lowered the binoculars slowly. They made it. Lieutenant Marlowe stood beside him, shivering from cold and exhaustion. 5,000 men, Elias. Every single one of them. You know what that means? Ward nodded. It means the Rhine line is broken. The Germans can't regroup fast enough to seal that gap. Marlowe exhaled. And it means we bought the entire Allied front a shortcut to the heart of Germany. Ward didn't respond. He looked back at the shattered remains of the bridge. Nothing but broken planks, half-sunk barges, floating debris, and chains dangling like torn ligaments. It was impossible to believe that just hours earlier, men had run across that structure under fire. A visit from Colonel Hargrove. Colonel Hargrove approached, muddy, sleepless, and visibly stunned. "Captain Ward," he said, voice cracking slightly. "I owe you... Well, I don't even know what I owe you." Ward straightened. "We just did our duty, sir." Hargrove shook his head sharply. "No, you did the impossible. That bridge was never supposed to work. Every officer on this river expected you to fail, including me." Marlowe muttered. "You're not the only one." Ward shot him a look, and the lieutenant smirked faintly. Hargrove continued. "Command wants you to know. This crossing may be the most important tactical success of the week. You saved multiple battalions from being trapped, delayed, or overrun." Ward absorbed the words with quiet humility. Then Hargrove lowered his voice. "Your intuition with the river. How did you know about the surges? The breathing windows? The slack water periods?" Ward thought for a long moment. "I didn't know," he said softly. "I listened." Hargrove frowned. "Listen to what?" "The river." The colonel blinked. "The river?" Ward nodded. "Water talks. It swells before it surges. It slows before it shifts. It warns you before it rises. If you don't treat it like an enemy, it'll tell you when it's safe." Marlowe stared at him. "Elias, I swear you're half engineer, half mystic." Ward gave a tired smile. "I'll take that as a compliment." German prisoners react. Later that morning, a group of German prisoners captured during a failed counterattack were marched past Ward and Marlowe. Several stared across the river in disbelief. One whispered to another, "Sie haben ein Brücke gebaut? They built a bridge." Another shook his head. "In that river? Under our guns? Impossible." A third replied softly, "And yet there they are." They watched American units forming a solid line on the eastern bank, something German High Command had deemed impossible without a major permanent crossing. One prisoner muttered, "If their engineers can do this, the war is lost." Ward, overhearing, didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply turned back toward the river, because he knew what the prisoner didn't. The bridge wasn't a symbol of power. It was a symbol of necessity, built under fire, against elements, against reason itself. Engineers gathered around Ward, the men who had built the bridge, exhausted, filthy, many injured, limped toward Ward. None of them looked heroic. They looked like men who had fought a river and barely lived. Sergeant Harlow spoke first. "Sir, I still don't understand how any of that worked." Ward sat on a chunk of debris, elbows on knees. "It worked because we didn't try to force the river to obey us." Corporal Reyes, face bandaged, asked, "So what did we do?" Ward answered simply, "We asked the river to let's pass." Some men laughed softly. Some nodded. Some just stared at the swirling water, realizing for the first time that the impossible bridge hadn't been built against nature, but with it, the final acknowledgement, after hours of silence. Marlowe stood beside Ward again at the water's edge. "You know," he said quietly, "when this war is over, nobody's going to believe we built that bridge in one night." Ward watched the sunlight flicker across the surface of the Rhine. "They don't have to believe us," he replied. "They only need to believe the men who made it across." Marlowe smiled weakly. "What do you think they'll call it?" Ward shrugged. "Something dramatic, I'm sure. Ward's madness, maybe." Marlowe nodded thoughtfully. "No, they'll call it what it was." Ward looked at him. "And what was that?" Marlowe answered, "A miracle made out of mud, rope, and courage." Ward didn't argue, because he felt the same. By late morning, the Rhine shimmered gold under a rising sun, calm and indifferent, as though it hadn't spent the night trying to swallow men whole. The violent surges were gone. The mist had lifted. Only debris, splintered planks, twisted chains, floating barrels remained as proof of the impossible bridge that had once stretched across the river. Captain Elias Ward stood alone at the water's edge, boots sinking into the mud. His uniform was stiff with dried river water, smoke, and blood. Some his, most not. Behind him, the sounds of a new foothold taking shape echoed across the eastern bank. Infantry digging in, officers shouting coordinates, artillery teams preparing their positions. The crossing had succeeded. Every one of the 5,000 troops had made it. Against rockets, against the river, against time itself. Ward exhaled slowly. It wasn't pride that filled him. It was relief. Deep and heavy, Marlowe approached, limping slightly. Exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "They're saying Corps Command wants a full report," he said, "and they want you to write it." Ward shook his head with a tired smile. "I don't know how to explain half of what we did." Marlowe smirked. "Just write the truth. They won't believe it anyway." Legacy in the making. By afternoon, news of the crossing spread through the Allied lines. Radio operators whispered it first. Infantry sergeants repeated it. Staff officers confirmed it. The phrase that kept appearing in the reports was simple: Ward's night bridge. No one understood how it had been built. No one could replicate it without the exact conditions. The same river rhythm. The same mad captain who somehow saw patterns in water that others missed. When the bridge engineers from higher command reviewed the wreckage, they were stunned. "This is impossible," one muttered. "This angle shouldn't hold. These chains shouldn't sustain tension across this current. This structure should have collapsed in 5 minutes." Ward simply replied, "But it held for 4 hours." 4 hours was enough to change the course of an entire division. Official recognition. A month later, Ward received a formal commendation citing exceptional ingenuity under fire, unconventional engineering judgment, and actions directly responsible for the operational survival of 5,000 troops. It wasn't a medal for heroism. It wasn't a medal for bravery. It was a medal for impossible engineering, forged in mud and chaos. Ward accepted it quietly. He knew something men in clean offices never would. That night wasn't about genius, wasn't about brilliance, wasn't even about courage. It was about listening to the river, to his men, to the rhythm of the world under fire, and acting in the narrow window where disaster could still become survival. A post-war memory. Years after the war, Ward returned to the Rhine. The river was quiet, polite, almost gentle. He stood on the bank where his bridge had once begun, touched the cold water with his hand, and whispered, "You let us through," for a long moment. The river seemed to swirl differently around his fingers, as if remembering. He smiled, wiped his hand dry, and walked away, remembering the impossible. Today, Ward's night bridge lives in military engineering manuals, museum exhibits, and the memories of the soldiers who crossed it. It is taught not as a blueprint, because it cannot be repeated, but as a reminder. Sometimes the greatest feats in war happen when logic fails, plans break, and the world tells you something cannot be done, and someone somewhere answers. Watch me. Call TO Action, US English. If this story amazed you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps bring forgotten World War II stories back to life. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether your family has any wartime engineering or combat stories. And if you love cinematic documentary-style war narratives, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next one.